Okay, guys, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Peter, how are you?
I am just making another day
Did you get any sleep last night?
because when you're a parent, you just make it another day.
How do you like being a dad?
I love it.
What's your favorite part?
Just seeing my kid smile, I think that's the biggest part. He doesn't, and he's starting to be a little bit more playful, and that's kind of
He doesn't look
thing.
like a baby. He looks like a little person.
everyone says that.
He's just like,
everyone,
what's up? What's up, Dad?
everyone says that. It's definitely
It's like
interesting.
He has
he has like I think it's his eyebrow. Anyway, it's.
Yeah.
I'm blessed. I
Good,
love my
man.
baby.
Good. Yeah, having kids is a blessing for sure.
Let's talk about some
Yeah, news.
news. There's a lot going on in the world right now.
So I think we talked about all these executive orders that President Trump has written. According to CNN, he's written 54 executive orders. So I think we should talk about what that means and maybe cover some of it. But what are your thoughts on this?
It's pretty crazy. I think I don't know if a lot of people understand what the executive orders are. Also, I guess what was in my mind was how enforceable are these executive orders? Does it have to be? Does it have to go through Congress? Right? Does it have to go because from what I'm reading, apparently it has to do. If it's some kind of like an emergency, then apparently you can bypass some of these.
Right.
I guess congressional hearings, and then so anyway, I think what's on a lot of people's minds are how enforceable are these? Because we got 54 of them, and it's like day one. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I mean, he is shaking things up, but how is he actually going to be able to enforce some of these? So I guess that's what's on my mind and what's probably on others.
Yeah, so let's start with maybe a definition. So, according to Google's AI overview, an executive order is a written directive from the president that establishes requirements for the federal government. So, it could be things like giving federal employees a holiday, or changing regulations, or pursuing agendas, which I think we'll talk about one of those today. Now, the courts can determine if the president has the authority to act and if it's actually constitutional, right?
Right.
So can that be, and some of the executive orders, so I went to the White House, like .gov website. Some of those executive orders actually overwrite or overturn the previous administration's orders. And the language is really interesting. I think people can check it out themselves. But yeah, he can't just do anything he wants, and it can be challenged for sure.
Well, I'll be honest, I haven't read through all of the 54 executive orders. One thing I do know is that at least one of them is blatantly against the Constitution. I think it's the 14th Amendment, and that's the birthright citizenship. And so I'm just curious because from my understanding is he can enforce these executive orders, and then that directs the executive branch and then, manage national emergencies, but it has to act within the Constitution. And so I'm just curious, okay, because they're already talking about at least for the birthright citizenship, they're already talking about how there's already lawsuits. AG, the Attorney General, will fight some of these orders. I'm curious on what actually is going to happen. What do you think?
So
What do you think about some of these executive orders and how you think it's going to play out?
So essentially, so two sides, right? So on one side, historically, anybody who has been born in the United States, even though their parents were not of U.S. Citizens, that allowed them to automatically be a citizen, right? But they're also, on the other side, have been problems with people like just, and this is a known thing where people just fly in to the U.S.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the technical, like, is it airspace? Is it you have to land, on soil, or if we're over the sky? Like, I don't know that part yet. But people
That's
have just
interesting.
come in because, where does that start and end? But then you could just literally fly in, have a kid, boom, they're American citizens, and then you fly back to wherever you came from.
There's a name for it. I don't know if you heard. It's called birth tourism or anchor baby.
Anchor.
It's called anchor baby.
That makes sense.
Apparently.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I'm an immigrant, right? I came from Korea, and I just became a citizen in 2015. And I went through the journey of, having to get, so my mom came on a student visa. She was divorcing my dad in Korea, and then she met another, person that became my stepdad. She had to go through this whole process. It took years. And that's actually one of the things that I remember about my childhood is like always talking about how I wasn't a citizen or even had a green card.
Oh, wow.
And that would prevent me from, certain things, right? So because your parents, were you born here?
I was born here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was born in Michigan.
Okay.
So I never, me and my brother never really dealt with that.
Oh, I didn't know you were born in Michigan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we never dealt with that. I know my parents had this. I honestly don't remember what happened with their citizenship. I believe they were on like a green card for a long time. And I know they were working. And so I do know that finally they did get their citizenship officially years later. So
I also heard, this is, like you said, one of those things that may or may not be constitutional. So,
well, it literally says all persons born. This is the Constitution. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That's the actual Constitution. So it is blatantly, against that.
right.
Now this,
Yeah.
FYI, this has nothing to do with our political beliefs, and we're not endorsing or going against some of these moves. We're just saying that that's what the Constitution says, and what Trump is, one of his executive orders are kind of going against that.
It's interesting because, and again, if you guys just Google, executive orders, CNN, Trump, I mean, there's a list, like on what date. You can scroll through it. There's things about, the federal government, about funding, about this and that. It's interesting. He's stirring up a lot of very important but perhaps controversial things. Like, why do you think he's doing this way?
In one sense, he promised he would, and in some sense, I feel that is a part of it, that he said he would make all of these changes. And again, with the tariffs, he was talking about 20% tariffs, right? Is that really what so we do a thing in our real estate business where we anchor. When we negotiate and we're just putting our secrets out there, essentially I explain it like this. I always punch them in the stomach and I soothe them to meet in the middle. It's the law of concession, right? So the law of concession is, I believe, from the negotiation book. I forget the author. He's the FBI terrorist.
Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference.
Chris Voss.
Chris
That's
Voss,
a
yeah.
Great book. Great book.
But the law of concession is actually really important, and it's something that I read about that. And really, what you do is you have to punch them in the stomach really hard, and you got to meet in the middle, knowing that you're going to meet in the middle. So with these executive orders, my assumption would be that it's a punch in the stomach to the public. Mm-hmm. Yet he is will he actually enforce 100% of it, or is he trying to hit the 80%? Is he trying to hit the 60%? And with these tariffs, and that's the prevailing thoughts around, at least in the in the social media space, is that what he is doing is he's anchoring them to later on kind of meet in the middle.
Yeah, I think he's definitely making waves, and he's definitely, like you said, it doesn't really matter if it's going to get passed or not, or enforced, but I think it's letting people know that he's ready to shake things up and stir things up. I'm interested to see how the lawsuits go. It's going to be really interesting how he plays these things out. But yeah.
Just a comment about that. I think the thing about these executive orders, which I find interesting, and in some ways, I'll be honest, it's a little appealing to me, because one of the biggest issues we have in this country is that we cannot, or we have a difficult time to pass laws, because there's just so much polarization within some of these laws, right? So whether it has to do with immigration, whether it has to do with, you name it, right? It's so hard to pass anything. Hence, what the presidents have done, or President Trump or some presidents in the past, they've actually been using these executive orders more often, and people are calling it, they're basically fighting against it, because they're saying that they're abusing these executive orders. They're made for really emergency situations. Yet one of the appealing things is that it is nice to kind of push laws through without having to go through this whole rigmarole. It's kind of like building home, as we have dealt with the city before, not having. Now, listen, I am so for the city. I am so for some laws and permitting, because we want to make sure we're building a good home, right? When we're remodeling, we don't want the roof to fall down. So in that sense, I totally get it. But is there a point where there's just too much regulation? There's too many blockages, and that's where the executive orders are. It's kind of nice to be able to actually push some of these things without all of these just bumps in the road.
Yeah, and we deal with that, actually. So that reminds me of, so we have two mobile home parks, one in Texas and one in Georgia. And a gentleman that's renting from one of our trailers, he just got deported. I think I told you about this maybe 2 months ago.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, Carolyn, how's number 8 doing? And she's like, he just got deported. And I said, what? What happened? So, long story short, he was forced to go through an interview process where something about his paperwork wasn't right, or maybe he came over illegally. I mean, it's Texas, right? It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And he literally just left his wife and kids and just went back. And I said, Carolyn, what's going to happen to his wife and kids? And she's like, well, he said, I'll find a way back. So we're actually waiting for him to come back somehow. And it's probably not, through an official process.
Yeah.
But it just reminds me of a lot of like personal stories that people are dealing with about this. But anyway, do you have any other thoughts on this before we move on?
No, let's talk about some of the other executive orders.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to just touch on the executive order regarding strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology. So I really like this one because I'm personally pro crypto in certain ways. I think we talked about meme coins last time. I think we covered that in detail. Essentially, this executive order recognizes that the digital asset industry plays a crucial role in innovation and economic development. It is, and then I'm just reading off of this. It is therefore the policy of my administration to support the responsible growth and use of digital assets, blockchain technology, and related technology by promoting the rights and the access to these cryptocurrencies or digital currencies. So won't go too deep into it, but that's the gist of it. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I looked through it as well. Had some interesting. Obviously, Trump is pro cryptocurrencies. Now, for it to be used as a actual currency, I one of the things that it reads is the development and growth of lawful and legitimate dollar-backed stablecoins. And so he's pro stablecoins backed by the US dollar. Because one thing that he doesn't want, and because to be honest, if we lose this status, we lose America in many ways. We lose our power, which is the dollar status. We are the reserve currency. We are the currency, the main currency of the world right now. And so it's interesting how he's pro that. At the same time, he wants to avoid the risk of starting a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, which is, it's one of the, what he says is it threatens the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States. And so I tend to agree with it. I don't believe in a central bank currency. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the issues that we have, even with our dollar, is that, when I say issues, it's like it's nice to be able to have the printer, but there's a lot of manipulation that can happen. There's a lot of manipulation in the central banks right now. And so
Yeah.
I think that's what Donald Trump is trying to avoid, but then endorse a U.S. dollar-backed stablecoin.
So some people might ask, well, what's the problem with having a central digital currency, And I remember hearing about, you remember the truckers in Canada and how they're, so in Canada, there were a thing where truckers weren't, basically the government stopped access to their own bank accounts. And even the people who supported this controversy around, I can't remember exactly what it was, but all I remember was the parties involved and the supporters of this, not even the directly affected people, the supporters of this issue, their bank accounts were frozen, right?
Wow.
Which is crazy. That's like, it's like you taking your kid's allowance back because you're the parent, right?
Yeah.
So the issue with the central digital currency is that if I get my money through a digital currency, just like a credit card, it could be stopped. They can track what I'm doing, which is like an invasion of privacy. So I think people have to look past some of these things and see how it would affect kind of our freedom and liberty. Yeah. And I definitely wouldn't agree with, and there have been talks about this worldwide, right? First world countries, third world countries. So I think it's a very, very, important topic that people should stay on top of.
Yeah, one of the biggest appeals of cryptocurrencies are that it is decentralized. Right. We want to keep it decentralized so one entity doesn't have too much power of whatever, our currency, for example, which is kind of what cryptocurrencies would answer for us. We don't want someone to be able to stop our credit cards. We don't want someone to be able to stop our bank accounts. That's too much power. We want the freedom as the people.
That's not a democracy. I mean, to be able to control somebody's money, that's, and it's really interesting that the executive order uses that language in it to protect the American people against the risk of central bank digital currency. So,
I think we tend to agree about that executive order. They also talk about safely, right? Because there is also a lot of unethical things that are happening with currencies, and obviously, like, funny thing, he made a meme coin, but there's a lot of scams happening with currencies as well. So as long as it's safely done, yes, we tend to agree on the executive order about the CBDC. I think his name is David Sachs. He's kind of the appointed person to run the currency, the digital, asset currency world of America. And so I've been following David Sachs for a long time with the All-in-One podcast. And so I'm excited to see how he's going to safely like deploy all of these different mechanisms to encourage digital currency usage, or these blockchain activities, which can be very powerful in this society. So
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
we should move on though.
I think one more is
Which one?
which
TikTok? JFK. I mean,
oh wow, no, that's I think JFK is another. Yeah, they're releasing the files for JFK, by the way. That's a huge thing, but I don't think we have time for that.
well, we don't even know, right? They're just saying they're going to release those files, and so we should just.
I mean, we can get into it, but essentially the question is, we can save that for later.
Let's wait.
Why don't we do
Let's
the
wait.
Why don't we do the TikTok? Because I think you know more about that. I haven't even gotten on TikTok because my life will be destroyed. I already have issues with like doom scrolling, and my attention span is like a dog.
Yeah.
But why don't you talk about TikTok and the ban?
Yeah, I think one of the concerns about TikTok, I think a lot of people are curious about where TikTok will go. Obviously, it's a wildly popular social media platform, and a lot of people are afraid, especially the younger generation. We're afraid because essentially that the application is being taken away from us. And so I think there's a lot of confusion on what's actually happening with TikTok, because we are actually able. So there was a moment, I remember that moment, I believe it was a Sunday, at least for us in Washington. It was a Sunday where they actually cut the TikTok app. We could not use TikTok. And it was very interesting. It was a huge shock for everybody. There was a lot of creators and influencers who their livelihood is on TikTok, right? And
Right.
TikTok shops and whatnot. So it was a huge upset. What happened was essentially Trump pushed for, because he is now he was against TikTok in the beginning. He now is endorsing TikTok because it influences the young people, and obviously it helped him win the presidency, is what he's claiming. And so what he did was he actually put a pause on the TikTok ban. So just so everyone's clear, if you are looking for the TikTok app on the App Store, you can't actually download TikTok because, well, essentially, I believe the fine for anybody who helps, encourage download or the usage of TikTok when they didn't have TikTok, every user, from my understanding, it's a fine of $5,000 per user.
Wow.
So significant. So that means if Apple allowed people to be able to download TikTok while these rules of the ban is set in place, it's $5,000 per user. And any other company that helps them, Google, right? Apple's not the only one. They will be fined significantly for that. And so the ban, it has been set in place actually. And what's actually going to happen with TikTok? Well, so what Trump did was he said, hey, let's make an extension for the TikTok app for 90 days. That's what he basically signed and tried to push for. The stipulation is that you have to have a sale in progress in order for you to actually get this extension. ByteDance, that's the parent company. And remember that the whole controversy is that ByteDance is a Chinese-owned company. Mm-hmm. They're afraid that the CCP is involved. Chinese Communist Party is involved with gathering data from the U.S. citizens or trying to manipulate the U.S. citizens through various content. That's the conspiracy right now. And so ByteDance, right now they have no intentions of selling TikTok. At least that's what's on the surface. What's happening behind the scenes, you never know. There's a clip where Trump turns to Larry Ellison, the co-founder of Oracle, and he says, "So you're going to buy TikTok, right? Let's go buy TikTok." And Larry Ellison said that's a good idea, Mr. President. So there has to be a sale in progress in order to get that extension. So that's kind of where I think there are things happening behind the scenes, but we just don't know that. But if there is no sale in progress, there is no 90-day extension. TikTok's back out. TikTok doesn't exist for us anymore. So that's the situation.
If you have it downloaded, can you still use it?
If you have it downloaded, yes, you could use it right now actively. And so people have been selling their phones.
I just saw that.
Their iPhones with the TikTok app for seriously I've seen like $50,000.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I thought that was fake. And then I guess it's not.
I've seen it on my Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
It's on eBay.
Don't you have TikTok on your phone?
I do. Yeah.
How much would you sell it for?
To you?
Yes.
I'll give you the best price.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
$49,999.
That's the punch. That's the punch.
$1 million.
Oh. And then what's the cure?
I'll give it to you for $48,999.
Okay. Yeah. That reminds me of a story. So, I think we all watched the Joe Rogan show a lot, and he had a guest on, and he talked about how in the recent Formula One race in Austin. So Austin has a huge Formula One track, and apparently they found like a Chinese data intercepting thing, like plugged into one of their computers, and the owner of the track had to shut that down because they found that.
Shut the whole thing down?
Something was I guess a USB, whatever it is, to siphon data, and it was from so they're gathering data right now. And not to get too controversial, but I've also heard people talking about the power grid and how the power grid, I mean, these are just facts, so you can interpret however you want. But a lot of our power grid stuff, like transformers and all that, is really from China and all these other places. And, I think it's something to think about. I think Trump has a lot of, we were like a globalist society. Now we want to go back to a nationalist type of society where we produce our own things. And, I think that's something to be watching out for. But that is... Oh, and then as a parent too, I would also a little bit of a side note, but I think parents should really consider the effect of social media on their children. I have 2 kids, and I worry about this all the time. The pressure is constant around them to buy them a gaming console or to give them a tablet or a phone, and one of the greatest documentaries I've seen on this was The Social Dilemma. And I do think that allowing healthy use of social media, especially for kids who have developing brains, need to be really controlled. And I've heard of algorithms being different in China. Like, for example, I don't know if it was on TikTok or a different app, but apparently in China, one of the social media apps shuts down at 10 p.m.
Oh, wow.
While as a 12-year-old, you shouldn't even be up, right? You shouldn't, and you can, to tie back into the direct control via the executive order. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. But, and then apparently every 3 funny reels or clips, there's a clip about science or math or technology.
Yeah.
Is that terrible? As a parent, I tend to think not. But it's really interesting about this TikTok thing. And how do you think this is going to play out?
I genuinely don't know. I would think that someone's going to buy it. I don't know who. I've heard Microsoft maybe considering TikTok. I've heard... We've heard that Elon Musk may potentially purchase it. I don't really know, but I'm going to let that play out, and we can certainly talk about it.
Is the U.S. the biggest user base for TikTok?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, China is significantly. I mean, it's very large, right? So, I would maybe potentially, but China is also very large, and they probably have a massive user base there.
Yeah, so interesting. All right.
But speaking of China, we should talk about DeepSeek.
Oh, right.
Which has been plaguing the internet. And what do you know about DeepSeek? And what do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, so I'll paraphrase what I saw on YouTube TV. This just happened over the weekend, but essentially, we have been doing this whole AI race with the world. And in the last 10 years, the US has basically been on top, right? Now, there's a AI from China called DeepSeek that's apparently just as good, if not even better, that just doesn't have enough data or information compared to the US AI, startups and companies and technology. And what I saw was that because DeepSeek is coming onto the forefront, of the world, a bunch of tech stocks went down. Like Nvidia, I think went down like 13% over the weekend.
Which is because of Nvidia's market cap. We're
Yeah.
talking like
Yeah.
I forget what it was. It was like 500 billion or
4 to 500 million.
was it million?
I think it was because, what is the market cap for? Is it like close to
rather
a
than
trillion? Yeah.
But
Whatever it
it's
was,
a
it was a
lot.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's hundreds of millions or billions, that's just like over the weekend. So that's what I know. I think that they're talking a lot about how is this race going to be won? And if we don't continue to put infrastructure, it's not just computers, it's the power grid, right? It's the human infrastructure. Like how many engineers are we producing or technical people versus China or other countries? So that's what I know. What have you heard about this?
I've always been curious on how AI is going to affect us. And I don't think a lot of us actually see it yet. And yet, the promises of what AI can do and what they will do will revolutionize everything around us. I think we just see very simple results, like seeing it in our Google. Like anytime I Google something, there's an AI version that is honestly very nice. It summarizes everything for us, and in that sense, we see the utility. In other senses, I don't think we actually know what the gravity is of AI technology. In regards to DeepSeek, I've heard it. I actually watched a clip from an ex-Microsoft engineer, and he said it's like being able to, I mean, obviously there's an AI race, but what they're claiming is, so they claim that they built this thing with $6 million.
Right. Yeah.
$6 million.
Yeah.
When our companies are, I mean, we're at like billions of dollars.
Yeah,
So that's a
billions
significant, we're talking like 10 plus billion dollars that that they've invested into this. And what people are saying is that AI it's overhyped right now. There's just too much hype with AI. It's overvalued because of the hype. And when this company comes in that, again, the claim is 6 million, like it's being done with $6 million. They're saying it's almost, or if not just as powerful as ChatGPT-4. That's where it's becoming compelling that they found a different method, a mechanism in which that power of AI, the utility of AI can be done so much cheaper. That's why the markets all went down, because they're like, oh, wow. It's like maybe we're putting way too much money into this when it could be done for way cheaper. And so now let's get into a little bit of the conspiracy around this. What people are also claiming is that they're not doing it for $6 million, that it wasn't done for actually $6 million. What they're saying is that the CCP has been assisting them behind the scenes to shake up the tech world, shake up the AI world, saying, hey, we could also stand here, but we could do it significantly cheaper. When in actuality, they probably assisted them way more, whether it's financially or whatever it is, in creating this incredibly powerful technology.
I think they released it on Christmas Eve or Christmas, which, could be kind of a posturing gesture. But yeah, I think that's very interesting to do more with less. I think that is one of the powers of a country like China, just because of the solidarity, which obviously has pros and cons. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything else that's on your mind?
I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I think, without getting too much into various topics, I think we're good. There's going to be a lot more executive orders that we can discuss, and we'll see how it all plays out at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, you got to be able to actually enact, enforce, and
Exactly.
that's going to be the biggest challenge, especially
Yeah.
when you're going against the clear constitutions. I don't think it's going to be met with ease. And that's why a lot of people love Donald Trump, because he is one that can get through all of these hurdles, is stubborn enough to, push past the opposition, which one of the biggest issues that we've had in the past is that we don't have leaders who can be as dedicated and stubborn enough to push past some of these hurdles, and that we can't get anything done in this country. So we'll see.
Yeah. I just encourage people to learn how to argue with yourself a little bit. Like if you have a viewpoint about anything, I think you have to kind of step outside your viewpoint and try to argue it from the other side. I think that's what's personally missing, because we get so much information and we're just like, oh, this is what it is. This is what it is. But a lot of information is biased to what we search and how we present our own questions, right?
Yeah.
Things like confirmation bias, where you're basically just confirming everything that who you are about or what you know. So I think as we get deeper into the beginning of his presidency, I'm excited to see what's going to happen personally. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about. Yeah.
Sounds good. For everyone who is watching, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our page. We are going to be covering topics, current events, just our take. I mean, we're obviously not perfect. We're not true experts on whatever current events are out there, but we do want to give our take on what we think is actually happening based off hopefully facts, right? Rather than just biases and whatnot. So please like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right.